Alright, all. So now we're going to use what we've been learning here to assist with what we already know. So here in exercise 4, this is kind of a run cycle. So in other words, my character's running. Those actions are repeating. And my character is running in place, and so it's kind of hard to tell whether the character is moving forward or whether the character is simply running in place. So before, what we would do is maybe animate something that moves across the page, but it would actually be much easier to do that utilizing a picture. So I have this really long cityscape here, which is here in this background. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a keyframe to quickly animate this. So I'm just going to drag this out, and let's set a keyframe for this, and I'm going to set this to position, and I'm going to move my character. I guess character ends about there actually. And then what I'm going to do, so I'm going to move the city, I'm going to have start there, and then it's going to go to the left to the right. And so the end result is going to be, when I play this back, that it looks like my character is running. How fast my character is running is actually kind of based on how fast this backward motion happens. So, you know, if I were to extend this outward, and you can actually take a keyframe and move it. If two keyframes are farther from each other, the action is actually going to go slower because it has more time to do the same action. So what would actually happen now is the background is going to move a little bit slower. So now he doesn't seem like he's running quite as fast as before. If the two keyframes are closer to one another, the action is going to happen a lot quicker, which is going to make it seem like my character's running super fast. Alright, so you can decide how fast you want this to go. But this is, like I said, we're using keyframe animation to help us make things go quicker and easier for us. Alright, so we've talked about using playing around with position and scale and rotation individually, but you can actually apply multiple actually, sorry, let me take that back. In the last couple examples, we've been talking about having a motion path. And the motion path has always kind of been like in a straight line, whether it's from left to right or bottom to top or something like that. But you can actually have multiple keyframes. So for instance, let's say I wanted a character that goes from the left to the right, and then it's going to go from top to the bottom, and then from right to left, and then from bottom to top. Okay. In order to do this, I'm actually going to need multiple keyframes. I'm going to need A to B, B to C, C to D, and then D back to A. Okay, so I'm actually going to do that here. So I'm just going to drag this out. I don't really know how long I want this to be. Maybe about, I don't know, a couple seconds. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to set my animation to position. I'm going to set a keyframe here, and then I'm going to maybe move it down to about 30 frames. And I'm going to move my character from the left side of the screen to the right side. And if I kind of scrub through this, you can see the zombie move from the left side of the screen to the right. That's point A to point B. Now I want to go from point B to point C. So it's not actually as far of a distance. I don't really need as many frames. So maybe to here, I'm going to take my character and move it. And once you've started to keyframe an object, every time you make a change and use that animation tool, you're going to make a new keyframe. So here's point A to point B to point C. I'm going to go from point C to point D, which is going to be over here, and then from point D back to point A, which is roughly back there. So I'm going to preview this. Okay, so you can see I'm doing multiple points. Now it's going a little bit fast. So if I wanted to, what I could is just kind of drag these out. By making them farther from each other, it's going to make the animation run a little bit slower. Okay, let me try running that again. Alright, so you can see it's going a little bit slower. It's going a little bit fast there. So maybe I... I can play around with the timing a little bit. Alright. And once again, think how long this would take you to do this frame by frame. Even if you just did a little bit of a walk cycle, it still would take you a long time. This was done pretty quickly. Of course, the problem is it's not a very fluid animation. You know, the character's just standing still like a statue. But at least, you know, we got a basic motion going on here. So that's an animation with multiple keyframes. Let's talk a little bit about rotation. We've talked about rotating an object. So for instance, I'm going to take this sun, and if I was to use the rotation option here, if I rotate, I'm going to take this Earth and I'm going to rotate. So when I rotate this Earth, it kind of rotates the way you think it would rotate. But actually, I don't want it to rotate around the... So normally what happens is when you draw something, it rotates around the middle of the frame. In this case, I actually wanted to rotate from a different rotation point. So I wanted to rotate around the sun so that when I rotate, rather than going like this, it's going to rotate around the sun. So this is called a change of point of rotation. The way I can actually do this is I'm going to go under, so with the Earth level selected, I'm going to go to where it says center. So this purple crosshair, that's my center, and I'm going to take it and move it to about the center of the Earth. Okay, now this is now the point of rotation. So when I rotate my Earth, you can see it rotates around the sun now. So I'm going to do a full rotation. Okay. Let's try the next planet here. So here's Saturn. Once again, Saturn is, the object goes around the center of the frame. Like this square is this is the center. So what I'm going to do is before I do any animation, I'm going to change the center point. Once again, I'm going to put the center of Saturn here. Now I'm going to switch this back to rotation, and then I'm going to start to animate it so that when I animate it, and let's do 360 degrees. Oops. I'm going to do a negative 360. Okay, see how it goes around the center there? Same for Jupiter. Before I do anything, I'm just going to change the center point, which is here, to here. And then I'll rotate. I have a feeling I'm going to get that. There you go. All right. So this may come into play where maybe you may want to change the point of rotation so you're not necessarily rotating around the center of your drawing. All right, so you know, sometimes we may, when you work, you might, sorry, I'm all flustered here. So in the last couple examples, when we were moving the, like for instance, the zombie, we were moving the entire picture, right? The whole zombie was moving, right? But sometimes rather than necessarily animate the whole object, what you may want to do is break a character down into simpler parts. Okay, so what I mean by that is here I have this character, right? And if you look at this character, it's like, here's the woman, and then I actually made her mouth and her eyes on a different level. And the reason why I did that is so I can actually animate the face using keyframe animation to speed up the process. Now we've done, frame by frame animation. We know how long animating facial expressions can take. Here what I'm going to do is, here I have the eyes. Maybe I want the eyes to kind of bulge a little bit, do that kind of, animation bulge. So what I'm actually going to do is use the scale tool, and I'm going to have the eyes bulge a little bit, and then come back down. Okay, not my best work, but not necessarily the greatest animation, but simple, right? I have the background, the face is doing what it's doing, and the eyes are kind of bulging. Or maybe I want to have, to add a little more detail, maybe I'm going to make the mouth move a little bit. So maybe the mouth, I'm going to just change the position of the mouth so that it's going to come up a little bit and then come back down. Once again, these little, there's an old expression in animation that if something is still, it's dead. Okay, it acts, it's sort of, think of it like it acts like it's a statue, right? And statues aren't alive. So by, even by doing something simple like, animating eyes, or, by using scale or the mouth or something like that, you're adding a little bit of motion. Is it as fluid as doing a frame by frame? The answer is no, but you are making, it's better than having a static image too. And it's relatively quick. Look how quickly I animated about 1 second worth of animation. Okay. All right, so here I have this raccoon, and I've actually set up an arm and a tail. And what I'd like to do is I want to make the tail kind of go back and forth, and I want the arm to kind of pivot, okay? Once again, I'm breaking my object into smaller parts. I'm not animating the whole squirrel. Instead, I'm breaking the squirrel into smaller parts where I can animate just the arm, or I can animate just the tail. I'm going to start with the arm, and so what I'm actually going to do is, typically, remember, things work in, when you move your arm, you're typically rotating it. So I'm actually going to use the rotation tool, oops, wrong one, to rotate. So I'm going to select this, use the animation tool, set a keyframe. I'm going to rotate the arm a little bit, and then rotate it back. Okay, simple little animation. If it's going a little bit too fast, then what I'm going to do is just kind of, put a little more distance between these keyframes, and the action should go a little slower. And this last part here with this tail, I want to also kind of rotate this. Now when I rotate it, it's kind of acting kind of awkward, right? And what's actually happening here, let me turn off the other layers for a second, is the point of rotation is actually this X. It's in the middle, but I actually want it to kind of rotate around this point here. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the center point for my tail. Make sure the right layer is selected. And I'm going to move the point of rotation down to the base of the tail. And so now that I've done that, what's going to happen is when I start to rotate, you can see it rotates from the bottom now instead of from the middle. So what I'm going to do is rotate the tail. Oops, wrong layer. Rotate the tail a little bit up. Oops. Sorry, I was going to start there. Rotate up. Rotate back. And then rotate back up again. Oops. All right. So you can see how doing this, I can add some quick animation to all of this. Maybe I want my squirrel here to kind of thump his tail, you know, where it's like boom, boom, boom. So it's kind of like, all right, well, maybe he's gonna, I'm not sure if I undid no, it's still good. What I'm gonna do is it's like, okay, well, he's gonna start rotating maybe in the middle, and it's gonna go down really quickly, and then back up real quickly, like in 1 or 2 frames, and then back down. And then back up. Let's try this out. All right, so see how you can, you know, use simple things like rotation or position to really get kind of some quick animation. Even though I didn't animate it frame by frame, it's still not bad. I mean, it's smooth and fluid. You know, the arm and the leg will never change the perspective, but at least it has a basic form of animation. So if you're pressed for time, animating a character like this would be some way you could do it without having to spend hours and hours doing a walk cycle or working, you know, worrying about that kind of stuff. Okay, so I want you guys to try that out. That was exercise 4 through 8.